Hi, this is Tina Lorenz, your copywriting mentor, mindset shifter, and transformational business coach. And today I want to tell you the story of a $4 million sales letter that was only 2 pages long. What? How could that even happen? And better yet, it happened in my very first year as a freelance copywriter. I'd only been at it for a few months when we had a grand slam result from a 2 page direct mail sales letter. So let me tell you how this all came together because there are so many things to learn from just a 2 page sales letter. So the first thing is that what was the topic? The topic was real estate investing, picking up properties that happened to be in an area of Florida called Lehigh Acres. And at that time, Lehigh Acres was just barren. It was a property that when people traveled to Florida for vacations from all over the world, there would be one of those promotions. It was like a small down payment and a small monthly payment, and you could own vacation property in Florida to someday build a home on. And so a lot of people took that opportunity. I don't know what the down payment was, but it's probably something very low and very reasonable, little small payments. But then people went back to their homes and kind of forgot their whole Florida fantasy and just let the property sit there. So at this particular time, which was before the real estate bust of 2008, 2009, it was way back in several years before that, there were property investors, real estate investors that wanted that property. At that time, it was valuable and they wanted to pick it up and so that they could develop it and start building homes on it. So there were literally boiler rooms with walls of telephones with people calling all over the world to call the people that owned the property to see if they could get them to sign a contract to sell them the property so they could invest in it, own the property, and build homes on it. And so there were like 50 and 60 people at a time, just, the phone's ringing like a telethon. And so my client, he wanted to jump into the action and see if he could pick up some of those investment properties. So he told me he had $400,000 to invest in purchasing the contracts. And he wanted to go up against all these people. And so that's what we did. And it was going to be a direct mail letter. It had to go out in the mail to outside the United States, in Canada, foreign countries, all over the world. And I wrote him a 2-page letter in a particular way that we'll talk about another time. But a particular way, I wrote this 2-page letter that went out, and it hit like gangbusters. We had something like a 10% response rate to cold traffic with just one guy with his direct mail letter up against these David and Goliath kind of situation with these professional callers that were calling all over the world to try and acquire the property. And not only did we have a 10% response rate, but people were literally writing notes on the margins and on the back and sending them back to him with personal letters on them. It just generated a huge amount of interest and a huge response, to the point where instead of $400,000 to invest, he needed $4 million. Okay. And so he had to get investors. He had to get other people involved. He had to get partners because he didn't want to turn down the opportunity to be able to obtain these contracts. And what it did was it brought in $4 million in just 30 days. And he made a $1 million profit. Quite frankly, scared him because he wasn't really prepared for that kind of response. And so there's so many lessons embedded in just this one little short story, but that he kind of shut down for a while after that because he didn't quite know what to do. And this is, I think there's so many interesting aspects of this, because sometimes when people have massive success that they're not really prepared for, it scares them. Because their mindset is still, this can't possibly be happening for me. This can't possibly be coming into reality that this is occurring. And what if I can't? I'm not saying that's what he felt like, but a lot of people would feel like, how can I follow this? Can I do this again? Is this just a one-hit wonder, right? And sometimes that happens to us as freelance copywriters and entrepreneurs, that we actually start putting up kind of an energetic barrier to success because we feel like we're not sure if we can handle it or we're ready for it. But the flip side of this is that you're as ready as you choose to be, as you decide to be. And so for this particular instance, I could have said, I can't do this. I'm a brand new copywriter. It was in my first year of freelance copywriting. I have to pay my dues. I have to take way longer than this to have this kind of success for a client. And the client could have said, there's no possible way that we can go up against these, as I said, the David and Goliath kind of scenario. Here we are, little tiny Davids with the big giant Goliath that's raking in all of these contracts all over the world. But if we had had that mindset combined, both the client and myself, we would have done absolutely nothing. I would not have been able to achieve that level of success for my client. He would not have achieved becoming an instant millionaire basically within 30 days because of a 2-page sales letter. There's so many other things that happen from that letter. But the point I want to make is if you are a freelance copywriter, if you are an entrepreneur, that you don't need to have the mindset that you should abandon the mindset, turn your back on the mindset that says you have to pay your dues over a long period of time before you can achieve success, or before you can raise your rates, or before you can consider yourself a pro or an expert at what you're doing. And so, again, if I had done that, I wouldn't have achieved the success I achieved in my very first year as a freelance copywriter. So the other aspect of that then is when that kind of success happens, that you need to embrace it. You need to own it. You need to be shifting any old stories you've been telling yourself about what's not possible and what you never have been able to do and won't be able to do. You need to really be aware of those old scripts that might be running in your head so that you can start deliberately choosing, making a decision that you're going to think that differently. So I also got a great testimonial from the client about this, about literally saying $4 million, 30 days, $1 million profit. And so what did that mean for me as a freelance copywriter? It means I'm going to charge more next time. And so when you start getting any kind of success like that, or even something less than that, but still recognizable success for your client, their feedback, what they were able to achieve, what you were able to do as a freelance copywriter, it's time to own that and say, now my fees are going up, which is one of the reasons I recommend you do not post fees on a website. You do not think of yourself as an hourly worker and posting what it is per hour to work with you so that people can buy some time, this type of thing. You need to be able to price by the project, and you need to gather the social proof as you achieve these things for your client, so that you are supporting your documentation, basically supporting that you are able to achieve results for your clients. Now, am I saying every project I have done did that kind of results? Absolutely not. And all the things you do won't either. Not every copywriting project or marketing endeavor is going to be a grand slam. But then when it happens, it's like, well, let's do more of that. What was working? Let's do more of what was working. Now, in this particular instance, this particular individual did not do more of what was working because they kind of got freaked out by the level of success that happened so quickly. And so that's something to be aware of, both for your clients and yourself. And also, if you are doing a campaign, to be ready to scramble if necessary to get more people involved. If you need more people working phones, if you need more people doing follow-up or any kind of delivery of services, anything like that, that you need to be ready to leap into action and not let it stop you. Recently, someone that I'm in a mastermind with had that situation where he and 2 other individuals who were doing a live training brought in $7 million in sales in just a few days. And so they found very quickly they needed more help. And so rather than shutting down and saying, well, we can't handle this, we can't fulfill this, they jumped into action and they gathered the people they needed, and they were very creative in how they did that to have the resources they need to deliver and to follow up and to make phone calls and to make connections that they needed to make with the people that were flooding in the door saying, I want what you have. So that's just something else to be aware of. And if you're working with a client, that they need to be aware of as well, that they might have kind of a challenge when it comes to fulfilling. So my intention with this, about this 2-page letter, is to break it down over the next several videos for you of lessons learned from a $4 million sales letter. Because the fact that it was only 2 pages long, for example, how do you cram all of that into 2 pages? So literally front and back, because we wanted it to be a very small direct mail that could easily go in an envelope and be sent anywhere in the world. How do you get that so compelling and make such a strong connection that people are clamoring to respond, choosing you over everybody else that's also approaching them, because they were getting multiple offers for their properties. They weren't just hearing from one person. They were hearing from many people. And ironically, what happened eventually to Lehigh Acres is it did get all built up, and then it all fell apart during the real estate bust of 2008, 2009. I don't even know what's happened to it since then. But that's the cycles that happen with this, of where are the opportunities? Well, how do you change the unchangeable? And so this is all part of creating wealth. And so riding the tide of that particular cycle of when the property was valuable is what created wealth. And at that time created homes for many, many people. And so, you know, we can't foretell the future, but we do need to understand that our marketing needs to change to adapt to current conditions. And so undoubtedly there were people that got involved with the marketing of homes that were built there eventually that had to be sold in a different way or had to be marketed in a different way. And this is where also the opportunities are for freelance copywriters to be nimble, to pay attention, to keep your fingers on the pulse of what's happening in the world, and to adjust the marketing, whether you're a marketer yourself, if you have your own programs or products, or whether you're the freelance copywriter or you're writing copy for your own programs. The things that worked a few years ago may not work exactly that way right now. The principles work, okay? The strategies and tactics, a lot of those can be still very viable no matter what else is happening. But the messaging, the nuancing, the context of how the message is delivered, understanding where your audience is at in that current time. How are they thinking right now? I mean, there's an expression in copywriting of entering into the conversation that's already going on in your prospect's head. What does that mean? It means you need to be dialed into what are they feeling like right now? What are they thinking right now? What do they need to hear from you right now to develop that connection, that relationship, that trust, and being able to pivot in your marketing when you see there's something else that you need to do or a different way you need to approach it, of what's working now versus what was working 10 years ago. All of these things enter into becoming a finely tuned marketing strategist along with being a copywriter. This is something I highly recommend that you do if you're doing freelance copywriting or whatever you're doing to create those marketing, that marketing content for yourself, that you keep the antenna, the kind of the marketing antenna up at all times, quivering and picking up the signals of what's happening today in markets everywhere and how you can take advantage of certain opportunities that may open up because of that, as opposed to shifting your messaging in other ways because of something that might be happening. You know, our classic example is the last couple of years with a global pandemic that no one had ever experienced before. No one was expecting. No one quite knew what to do with that. But it opened up other opportunities in markets of other needs, other things people were looking for, that created a wealth, that created opportunities, that solved problems for people, that created solutions for people, from everything from shifting learning to online events, going virtual and being online, so we could still be learning about marketing, still connecting with people, still networking in other ways. I mean, you know, Zoom became like the standard in everyone's household and business pretty much, because and opened up other opportunities there. And so by paying attention to what's happening instead of closing down and being able to adapt to the current situations, that's how you move your business forward. So in a 2-page sales letter, if we could do that with a cold audience, it just should be an encouragement to you, but to understand also that if you ever have a client, for example, that says, well, it's only short copy, you know, that's kind of like code for it shouldn't cost very much, right? But what was the value of what happened with a 2-page sales letter? What was the value to my client? What was the value to the people who were not using that property and could be paid to be able to sell basically their interest in that property to someone else and do something else that was more relevant in their life at that time? What was the value to them? What was the value to me as the freelance copywriter who was able to now tell this story and share this story and see the advantages and the opportunities that opened up for my client, whatever he chose to do with those, right? So it's always about the value. It's always about the result, not just the thing. Right? It's not the details, the process. Sometimes what happens for people in their marketing is they get so process oriented and kind of jargon oriented of this is the language of my specialty, that people are just kind of numbing out. You know, it's not resonating in any particular way because you're not making a personal connection. So one of the secrets of that $4 million sales letter was the connection that was made with the audience. I'll tell you more about how I did that and why we had such a huge response in such a short period of time. Just watch for the additional videos that are going to be suggested as you go through this series about the $4 million sales letter secrets. I hope that you've learned something here today and will comment, subscribe, share this with others if you feel like it would be helpful to them. And I look forward to sharing more secrets of a $4 million sales letter next time. Until then, this is Tina Lorenz. Thanks for joining me today.